Hello and welcome to the Blue Shadow Podcast. My name is Joey.
I am Dan.
And today we are going to take a look at Tales of the Empire and also kind of look forward to what we might want to see from the future of this Tales of series.
Yes.
We do want to start off, though, before we do that, with our usual, what have we been watching, playing, or reading? What have you been up to, Dan?
It's been a very busy past week for me.
We should say congratulations, Dan. He just got his master's degree in biotechnology.
Thank you. So I really didn't have a lot of time to watch or play. I'm continuing West Wing. I'm in season 6 of 7. And I just started Dooku Jedi Lost, the book, not the audio recording. How about you?
I have honestly been pretty busy as well, bouncing back and forth. My sister graduated. My brother I haven't been doing as much, but playing Marvel Snap, slowly going through X-Men, the animated series. And also, after having finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I'm now kind of like writing up my thoughts on it so we can put something out here. It's taken me a while, but again, long game, so hopefully keep an eye out for that soon. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've been up to.
Are you still on old X-Men, or are you on 97?
Still on old. We're in the second to last season.
Okay.
I do want to say something else, though. Last week, we recorded on May 4th, which we mentioned we were going to trivia, and we did end up going to trivia, and we got first place in Star Wars trivia, which was very exciting. We made a high school age student kid who was there with his mom very angry by beating him.
He flipped us off. He insulted my girlfriend. You know,
and then he left.
Typical high school things.
But we're the real winners. We only missed one question. And that question was, how much did George Lucas sell Lucasfilm to Disney for? And the answer, Dan, was?
$4,050,000.
An odd figure, for sure.
Yes.
So yeah, that was a bonus question. We're all good, though. Yeah. But another thing that happened on May 4th, though neither of us watched it on May 4th, is the release of Tales of the Empire. We already kind of talked about our feelings on it. We were both very excited, but we want to talk about now exactly what happened. So the way we're going to kind of run this is we're going to go through episode by episode, starting with Morgan. Dan's going to give little synopses, and we're going to talk about each episode. And then I'm going to do the same for Barriss, and then we're going to kind of tie them all together and see what lessons can be learned from all of them together. So, Dan, you want to kick off Barriss's episodes?
Yes, of course. So episode 1 of Tales of the Empire and Morgan's specific story was called The Path of Fear. This episode, we finally get to see the Separatist attack on Dathomir and the Massacre of the Night Sisters. We've known about it, we knew it happened, and we get to see General Grievous in his full glory. So we are introduced to Morgan, and who's a Night Sister, and her mother is a Night Sister as well. They are getting driven back by the overwhelming Separatist force, and they get to encounter Prime General Grievous, who only used 2 lightsabers, right?
I think so.
And he still did a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm.
So the first part of this episode really ends with Morgan's mother getting killed, and they kind of the Separatists leave Morgan kind of just, I guess, to die on the ground. And she is rescued by a new clan of witches. We don't know.
The Mountain Clan, I think.
Mountain Clan, but we don't know too much about them. She was rescued, and she had to come to the realization that her entire clan, everybody she ever knew, was just wiped out. And the mother, they pretty much told her, you can stay here as long as you need till you find out what your next path is. We'd be happy to help. And you can tell Morgan's really just devastated by everything that's happening, and everybody around her senses that as well. So the mother says, well, why don't you go out for a hunt? And so Morgan goes out on a hunt with a girl named Nali, who we later find out is the daughter of the Grand Matron.
Mm-hmm.
And here they kind of have a conversation of Morgan saying, we need more weapons, they're going to come back, we're not safe. And Nali's saying on the counter side to that, yeah, we are, we're in the mountains, we're fine. So they come back from the hunt, and Morgan is still trying to rally more troops around her of, we need more weapons, we're not safe, while Nali is, yes, we are safe. So eventually Morgan is able to convince some other of the young mountain witches, to go with her to a old Night Sister, what's the word? Hideout?
Yeah, something like that.
And where they go in and they're able to find weapons. unfortunately, the Separatists found them.
Mm-hmm.
And we get the really cool shot of the droid troop carrier coming in, dropping super battle droids. Very cool. And they have to defend themselves. And you can tell that Morgan's the only one who ever's really had experience. The one girl is killed almost instantly. One of the mountain witches gets injured. And it seems like Morgan's about to be killed. And then we see the Grand Matron appear, use some magic, and destroyed everything. And she kind of tells Morgan that you've set your path. You're no longer welcome. And you don't need, just because you don't show violence, doesn't mean you can't use it. Something along those lines. And so she kicks Morgan out. And Morgan has to fend for herself. And that concludes the first episode of Morgan's story arc.
Mm-hmm. I really loved that. I thought it was very cool. I think it was the coolest of Morgan's episodes.
Yes,
because it connected directly. It situated this character who we are not as familiar with right in the Clone Wars, something we're very familiar with. And I thought it was a very nifty way to show us that story through a lens of a very cool character that we don't know much about. The General Grievous stuff was crazy.
Yeah, oh, so cool.
And the way her sickles she was fighting with Morgan's mom.
Yes,
it was nuts.
And then how Morgan picked up the sickles and fought in the same way. Yeah,
it was so cool. And this is the first time that I was ever scared of the droids or felt intimidated by the battle droids. Maybe, yeah, I'd say that never this truly intimidating. You're not usually following a character who's fighting them that isn't really equipped to fight them.
Right.
So I thought that was really nifty.
I agree. It was phenomenal.
But for the story, cool aside, for the story, it's a great explanation for, kind of threading the needle between we see Morgan and she doesn't have her face markings and she's not really fully a Night Sister to when we, in Ahsoka, see her, she's fully metamorphosized into a Night Sister. So yes. What did you think about the tattoos going away and the magic kind of fading away from Morgan when her clan died?
I feel like that makes sense, right? We know from what we've seen in Ahsoka that the Night Sisters' magic is very important to them, and that it has to kind of be given to them, and they have to be using it. And once the clan died, it makes sense that she can't really use the magic anymore. She can't rely on it.
You haven't met Merrin yet in Fallen Order, have you?
No.
All I'll say to that is
she's a Night Sister on Dathomir.
She's a Night Sister, and she, despite her clan being gone, she is still full Night Sister. Excuse me, can use all the magic and all that. So that's kind of an interesting counterplay, but there could be something maybe she was taken in, because Night Sisters will take in outside people. Maybe she wasn't from Dathomir truly a Night Sister.
Maybe she just hasn't completed her training yet.
Could be something like that, yeah. I mean, not necessarily. I feel like sometimes as Star Wars fans we like to overcomplicate things. Yes. And that doesn't necessarily... I think it's a cool way of explaining it, but without having to think too much about it.
Yes.
Another thing I really loved, and again, this is the episode where I feel like Morgan was the least thing I want to talk about, because seeing the Mountain Clan, I thought it was so cool. It's almost like if the Night Sisters that we're familiar with are using the dark side to fuel them, and that's kind of been said in the Jedi Survivor prequel book. These guys are using the light side, because you can kind of see it in their magic. It's rainbowy blue and white,
and just the colors. The Night Sisters are dressed in dark colors. The Mountain Clan was dressed in light colors.
I think that's such a cool concept.
It mirrors what we see with the Jedi. They all, for the most part, typically wear light colors. Anakin being the exception,
for good reason.
And the Sith, or the dark side users, are typically dressed in dark colors. So I think that's a great parallel.
Definitely. And I apparently these guys were introduced in an old Legends book, but this is the first time we're really seeing them. Really the first time I'm made familiar with them and all that. But I think this episode, if we do want to talk about Morgan for a little bit, highlights her disparity and why we kind of see her at every point. She seems like she's kind of struggling from Mandalorian to Ahsoka to every subsequent episode, and in this episode, she feels like she's always kind of reaching forward on the, like, she's not in control. She's not comfortable with where she is. And I think this kind of shows her being put on like the off foot from the beginning. And I think that's the big takeaway from this episode.
Yeah. I 100% agree. It really sets up what she talks about later. She, like you said, she's not in control of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is reaction based from her. She's trying to recover from watching her people get slaughtered, to go to a new tribe who's telling her that you can't really stay here. So yeah, I think it really sets up Morgan for the Morgan that we've seen in The Mandalorian, in Ahsoka, and which we eventually see in episodes 2 and 3.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I want to say about it is like highlighting, like, this starts out like just from the very beginning, like the revenge angle that she kind of comes with it. And we can talk about when we get to the next few episodes, like she's ultimately motivated by revenge. And this is really showing where that's coming from. I thought this was a great introduction chronologically to Morgan, for sure.
It humanized her too.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's what these Tales of series are for.
A great way of answering a question or giving a character the spotlight that might not need a whole series. I think it was great. And Morgan, this episode made me like, I as a big Ahsoka series fan was very excited to see Morgan, but I could see someone who's not as into that show being like, oh, her really? But I think this first episode kind of, as you're watching it,
they draw you in the very first scene.
I mean, yeah, having General Grievous for the first time, and since that like brief thing at the beginning of the Clone Wars season 7, he's not been around much recently, so it was very cool. And yeah, I think it really set her up as being like, this is a character that deserves this attention.
I agree.
Awesome. Anything else to add?
No.
I do want to say, I think it's fun that the titles of Morgan's episodes are connected to Yoda's speech about fear. So our first one here was, what was it called?
Was it fear?
The Path of Fear.
Yeah. And it's the path of anger. And then
hate.
Yeah.
Yoda says fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, and I guess Ahsoka is the suffering because she kind of dies in that show.
Yeah.
I hope she comes back. My sisters come back all the time.
Yeah, as if you've listened to our Bad Batch, we kind of talked about.
We did. Team Morgan.
Yes.
Anyway, let's head into the second Morgan episode.
So the second Morgan episode is, as we just mentioned, The Path of Anger. In this episode, Morgan is a little bit older. She's an adult. And it opens on her giving a presentation to a group of Imperials. And as we know, if you've watched Rebels, like I know Joey has.
This is the Rebels fanboy episode. I was squealing.
We see Morgan pitching the TIE Defender project. And if you know Rebels, you know that the TIE Defender eventually is picked up by Grand Admiral Thrawn. However, it gets shot down in this meeting. Moff Isden?
I think he's new for this.
Yeah. Pretty much says that this isn't feasible. It's going to cost too much and it's going to be hard to produce. And Morgan tries to, defend herself, saying, well, I have the facilities for it. I have Corvus. It's a lot of raw goods. I have the manufacturing. They're like, yeah, no. We're just not going to do it. So they all leave. However, one Imperial officer stays behind. And that is Gilead Pelion. And again, this Tales of the Empire, specifically with Morgan, draws back to everything we've seen with her before. This is not the first time we've been introduced to Pelion.
No.
We saw him in Mandalorian.
Mandalorian and like the Shadow Council.
Yeah. And talking about where Thrawn is.
And he's also integral in like the Legends and canon Thrawn books. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of Thrawn's like right-hand man.
Yes.
So seeing him here with connection to the TIE Defender, I at first thought it was Yularen.
I did too. It kind of sounded like him.
And I know Tom Kane, who does the voice, isn't able to do voice acting anymore. So I was like, oh, maybe they recast. And I was like, wait a minute. Something's not right here. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Anyway, we got an Pelion aside.
No. And, well, they have a nice little meeting. And Morgan is, I don't want to say scared of Pelion, but apprehensive.
Definitely.
Saying, like, I don't want to get into bed with you. You're just gonna steal my stuff. And
She basically, I mean, because she is coming right off the back of the officer saying, like, we don't like your plan, but we're going to come steal your planet's resources.
yeah, and he's like, well, I'm not here for myself. I was sent by my superior who is interested. So we'll be in touch. Just don't forget about us. And he leaves. And then we go back to Corvus, where we find that Morgan is the magistrate. And she has a lot of these HK droids, right? Were they HK droids?
Yeah, they're the same ones as the
Yeah.
Mandalorian, the assassin droid.
Running protection. And it kind of pans into a compound, which, again, we have seen before in The Mandalorian.
They seem to be a little, like, lighter. Like, the forest was there. We can talk about that next episode, but the forest was there. It seems brighter. Like, if the sun is shining, which, in Star Wars means something.
Yeah. I feel like and never mind, I'll wait to give some insight to the end.
Sorry.
So, anyway, Morgan back to Corvus, and she's kind of stopped by some of the people who live there, saying, what are you doing for us? And she kind of gets indignant about them. And they ask her, they said, we trusted you when you were going to pair us with the Empire, that you would help us. And she's saying, I am helping you. You just have to, kind of wait for it. And the crowd does not like that. So Morgan does retreat into her rather large castle, which was interesting compared to the little town around it. And we see Morgan's singular person living in this giant house.
And it has that same ornate entryway that we saw her and Ahsoka fighting in Mandalorian Season 2.
So then it kind of pans to the night, and Morgan is standing out on a balcony, or a little crosswalk wall, would you say?
I think it's kind of like, if you remember, like the outer wall, like where Ahsoka like cut the bell in Mandalorian, you remember? I think it was that. I think it was like like the outskirts of the city, because she saw the Empire come in, right? So she was like all on the outskirts.
Yes. And while she's up there talking to her guards...
Yeah, I pulled the rug out from under you there, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We see this assassin who we have seen before.
Oh, yeah.
Really? And, yes, try to assassinate her.
I was so excited. I hate that character so much. But I was so excited.
And they had a great fight scene. And as they're fighting, it pans to the villagers. And the one villager says, should we help her? And kind of the lead one was like, no.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah. So as she's fighting Rook. Yes, they're having a great fight. Rook does get the upper hand on her. Morgan is able to disarm him and win. As she wins, we see our friend Pelion come back and say, good job, you've passed the test. And she gets really indignant again, like this was a test. I can't believe it. Rook disappears. And then we see our friend, our man in blue, or white, the blue man in white, Grand Admiral Thrawn. He wasn't an admiral. He was
Admiral Thrawn.
Admiral, not Grand Admiral.
Yeah. They didn't go in full to like the organ music, but it started hitting a little. I was so excited.
Yes. So, as they're having this conversation, Thrawn tells her, we're going to partner with you. We are going to make this TIE Defender project happen. But he has a question for her, which it's not the first time she was asked this question. It's, why do you want to work with the Empire? And she gives the cliche cookie cutter answer, to help the Empire succeed. And he's like, no. Why do you want to help the Empire? What's in this for you? Other people have said this. We've seen through other people. You're not like other people. And then she says the word, I'm in it for revenge. Kind of what we talked about last episode. Yeah. And that's where we get left off. We see the 3 Super Star Destroyers, and we see Thrawn tell Morgan, these are yours. This is all at your disposal. Let's make this project happen.
Which, the Rebels connections. I was in my glory. You were probably watching it like, oh, he's got to be happy about this.
Yeah. I love Rebels. Don't get me wrong. But
it holds a very special place in my heart.
I know.
So I really like this episode a lot, mainly because of the Thrawn. There's that conversation. Two animated characters talking. shouldn't get me as excited as this did. It so directly connects to Ahsoka. I kind of want to start by talking about the last thing I said. It's very similar to their last conversation in Ahsoka, where Thrawn essentially says, "For the Empire."
Yeah.
And he's a very intelligent guy. He knows. She said, literally admitted for revenge. This time, she doesn't say it, but we know in Ahsoka, she responds to that for Dathomir.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it perfectly mirrors what we have already seen.
Yes.
So from the beginning of their relationship, business relationship.
Yeah, I'd say it's a partnership.
It's the same thing. They both know kind of, like she knows he doesn't really care about her. And he knows she doesn't care about the Empire.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Oh.
I really enjoyed that. And another thing I really loved about the Thrawn stuff was Thrawn talking about, we through our Bad Batch discussion, we kind of talked about how the Empire's weaknesses are apparent, and the way that they run the Empire leads to the weaknesses that the Rebellion's ultimately able to exploit.
Mm-hmm.
And Thrawn saying, like, devoting their resources into these cheap, basically, like, it's going to cause the military to be disillusioned, not be able to fight well, and result in the Empire going down.
Mm-hmm.
And that really is what we see happen, because all the resources are essentially funneled into the Death Star, which we see. So it's just really, everything is really gelling really, really well with this episode, and I really love that.
They are very good at releasing things at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like Bad Batch, season 2 of Bad Batch, and The Mandalorian, cloning.
Mm-hmm.
It kept talking about cloning. Everything was being led to cloning. As we see the pinnacle in the series finale of the Bad Batch, season 3, we finally understand where this cloning is at the time and why they need the clones,
mm-hmm.
which, points to somehow Palpatine has returned on his little claw.
Something I did gently reprimand someone for complaining about it. Star Wars trivia.
Yes.
We love the sequels. I love the sequels.
I appreciate them.
We're going to work on that.
Well, pretty soon we will be doing a sequels rewatch.
Definitely. There's something else I wanted to ask you, but it evaded my mind, but it will definitely come back to me. So you talked about how like they release things at the right time. I think season 1 of the Bad Batch, and you don't catch me talking about this too often. I think it ran parallel to Andor very well, like just showing like the real world, like tour of the galaxy of how the Empire just sucks.
Yeah,
I think it did a great job with that, and I think this is another example of that. How they everything flows together. It's all Star Wars.
We're going to talk about this in episode 2 of Barris.
Yes.
So, not to jump the gun, but
no, that's okay. So yeah, I mean, I guess other than that, it was cool to see her on Corvus for sure.
Yeah,
I wasn't quite expecting her to be there so long, almost, because we see this takes place. You'd imagine. I mean, at some point during the Imperial reign, but she's on Corvus well after the original trilogy. So
yeah,
it's kind of interesting to see that she's been doing this for so long. What was she doing after the TIE Defenders got destroyed? Why were the TIE Defenders produced on Lothal and not Corvus? Mm-hmm. These are all wonderful questions that we don't have the answer to. But and at the end of the day, they're unimportant questions.
Yeah.
But it's just so cool to, again, I've talked about today how much I love Morgan. When they announced it, I talked about how much I was excited about Morgan. Mm-hmm. And having her directly connected to Rebels, it just got me all jazzed.
It was great. And speaking of time jumps, that leads us to our third episode.
Absolutely.
The Path of Hate.
Mm-hmm.
And this episode, we see a new ship fly in and land on Corvus. It's worth noting that Corvus is still very foresty.
Verdant.
It's a good word. It's a good vocab word. I'll remember that one. Corvus is very verdant. And the ship opens and we see the New Republic. So this has to be what? Maybe 10 years or so? Maybe 5? I don't know.
Well, if the original trilogy takes place like 7-ish years, I think. Mm. This is definitely at least 15. Because this episode takes place, I believe, like shortly before The Mandalorian.
Yes.
So like this is...
And that would make sense.
Probably like 2 to 3 years after Return of the Jedi, I'd say. So a nice chunk of time between.
And they mention it. Some of the villagers, the villager who says we shouldn't help her, meets with the New Republic ambassador to Corvus. Mm-hmm. I'm blanking on her name, and I will.
And she was from Corvus, right?
Nadura. Mm-hmm. She's from Corvus. She got out of Corvus, and the guy whose name is Wing asked her, "Well, why'd you come back?" So showing that Corvus is not great for anybody other than Morgan. And Nadura kind of asks, "Oh, where is she?" And Wing says, "Well, we haven't seen her in ages. She's just been alone." And while this is all happening, the camera keeps panning to the HK droids on the roof, really making it look like it's prison camp.
And they have those torture lightning chamber things up there.
Yeah.
From the Mandalorian. That was rough.
Yeah. Anyway, Nerda does get an audience with Morgan. Kind of surprised me. Not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
How she was away for so long and all of a sudden it's just, yeah, I'll meet you.
I feel like it speaks to Morgan. I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
doing this now. I feel like it speaks to Morgan. Like, I really don't think Morgan is like I don't think she wants to be the bad guy.
No, I think she just wants to kind of do her own thing.
And it's that reactivity and the like never being truly like comfortable. I think that comes back to play here. Anyway.
And then they have Morgan and Nadura have this conversation, and Nadura is pretty much like, "You need to come with me. I'll guarantee you get a fair trial for the New Republic." And Morgan kind of looks at her like, "I'm not going with you." And it kind of gets this Mexican standoff, which eventually ends with Morgan hitting her Beskar spear on the ground and says, "Kill them." And that starts this massacre of people. The New Republic escort gets gunned down in the courtyard. Some of them escape. The HK droids shoot them down in the street. Nadura is running for her life, trying to hide. And it keeps panning to the gate, the big gate with the bell, with 2 HK droids on top. And there's only one way in and out. So I don't know about you, but I felt like I knew how this was going to end.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't going to be good. I wasn't sure how it was going to end, but I knew it wasn't going to be good.
Right? One way in, one way out. Morgan walking down the middle of the street, walking to the gate, walking to the ship. Mm-hmm. Only place Nadura can go. And Nadura makes a break for it, and I'm like, "Oh, are they really going to let her out?" No. 2 HK droids on the wall blow up her ship. And we get a rather violent explosion.
I know.
I was surprised
by how violent it was, and I thought, based on her distance, I was like, "Oh, it's Star Wars style. She'll be fine." No, I think because of the singed,
like her whole body was
kind of gruesome.
As I was watching this, I'm like, "This isn't a kid show."
No,
it's animated, but it's not a kid show.
No. Those are very important distinctions.
Yes, and so Wing does run out to help Nadura, and she's holding a comlink and tells him, like, "Help's coming. You just need to be ready to accept help when it comes." And she dies and drops the comlink. Wing goes to pick it up, pierced by a spear, by Morgan's spear, and pretty much
love seeing the spear, but
tells him nobody's coming, and they drag him away.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the end of the episode. No, I forgot one important thing. Morgan has her HK droids burn down the forest.
Which takes us right to the Mandalorian.
Yes. Hence, the help that is coming.
Hey, Danny, you know whose voice that was on the comlink?
I thought it was... I watched it without subtitles.
Mm-hmm. You know whose voice it was, Dan?
I'm going to guess it was General Syndulla's.
It was Bo-Katan Kryze.
Was it really?
Uh-huh. Dan and we've not had this discussion on air, I don't believe. Dan believed aggressively that at the beginning of season 3, Bo-Katan is going to be the main villain of the Mandalorian. I, a Bo-Katan sympathizer, who we have definitely mentioned that we recorded in a room that has a replica Bo-Katan helmet. Love Bo-Katan. Why is the New Republic calling the villain for help, Dan?
We're 1-1. You got Bo-Katan. I got Tech.
I would have rather been right about Tech.
Boo-hoo.
Anyway.
All I'm going to say
Are you surprised it's Bo-Katan? I am surprised it was Bo-Katan.
I thought it was... I wasn't sure who it was. I thought it could be Hera. Again,
Hera would have made more sense.
I intentionally watched stuff without subtitles.
Mm-hmm.
Because for comedies, it spoils the jokes. For serious stuff, it spoils, the mystery element. So I don't know if in the subtitles, did it say Bo-Katan?
Yeah, I don't watch with subtitles, but it does, if you do, say Bo-Katan.
Yeah, so that's kind of why
I was intrigued by that. I did not expect Bo-Katan. It makes sense because Bo-Katan knew where Ahsoka was.
Mm-hmm.
So there's clearly some sort of interplay, between the New Republic, Bo-Katan, Ahsoka.
Yes.
Which, in the big picture, does make sense. But I was surprised to hear that voice coming through.
Yeah.
Clearly you were, too.
Yeah.
The villain.
Listen, they set it up so she could have been the villain.
100%.
The first lines out of her mouth in the most recent season of The Mandalorian is, "Let's go finish this once and for all," as she puts on her helmet. So don't tell me that you knew she was going to be...
The season turned into a family takes the galaxy.
It did. But before we derail too much,
derail.
They absolutely set it up where she could be the villain if they wanted her to.
Much like they set Tech up to survive.
They didn't. He's not force sensitive.
He doesn't need to be. Anyway,
that
we can get into why I think Tech could have survived and Mace Windu could not have in a different time. But anyway, I like this episode a lot, and I think, I'm trying to find my way to what I'm trying to say here. I think that it really delivers us to the Morgan we see.
It gave us everything we needed to know about Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
We got a lot of bits and pieces about her prior to this.
Mm-hmm.
We knew she was a manufacturing person, as we've seen in Ahsoka. We knew she had connections to Thrawn, as we've seen in The Mandalorian. And now they just kind of filtered it all together for us.
So they're definitely building that giant, enormous Peridia hyperspace ring, right?
Yes.
Has to be something like that, right?
I don't know.
It is kind of veiled what they were doing, which is probably by design. But did you notice? I can't remember if this was the last episode or this episode, but she had that triangle gold ship that ultimately docks in the Peridia hyperspace ring.
Last episode.
So I thought that was nifty to kind of connect it to that, and it makes you think something with this is connecting to that.
Oh yeah,
totally would make sense too.
Yeah.
This was, I feel like, the most straightforward. Like we weren't really having any like deep symbolism. It was just like, this is the descent of Morgan. And right. Star Wars Explained pointed this out. I don't know that, I think it might have been lost on me, but this Morgan portion of these episodes starts with like her world burning from someone else attacking it. And she ends being the person who's burning the worlds.
Yes. And you could even argue that Morgan may have convinced herself she was helping people.
Uh-huh. And I think that is the case.
Because she said, like, they don't want help.
And she called their wages fair.
Yeah, and then she's talking about, in the last line, she's like, we're all going to be part of something bigger. When she was burning the forest.
Mm-hmm.
So I genuinely do believe that they wrote Morgan to believe that she was not the villain.
Mm-hmm.
That she just stuck to her principles.
For better or worse.
For worse.
For worse. And I think that kind of brings us to anything else to add specifically about this episode before we...
No.
I think it really highlights the why Morgan for Tales of the Empire, beyond giving us little tidbits of understanding more about her. I think it highlights with the Empire someone who can deal with the atrocities caused by the Empire. I understand it was it was all Palpatine. At the end of the day, the destruction of Dathomir it was the Palpatine, so it was the Empire more or less. I think it shows how she can become part of the Empire, tangentially maybe, but ride that wave into like descending into the very exact thing that caused her all the pain that she's going through. And I think that's a great example of how the Empire can do this to people and why she's a wonderful candidate for a story like this.
Yeah, I agree.
Any other like big thing? We're going to kind of tie Morgan and Barriss together at the end, but do you have any other like big lessons from...
Not without talking about Barriss.
Awesome. Who would have ever thought that these two characters would be paired together so well?
So well.
Shockingly. I'm surprised, but that takes us over to the Joey side of running through the synopses, which starts with Barriss, a character who I do want to start by saying, oh my, did I want to see what happened with Barriss for so long. I thought she was going to be in Rebels. I thought she was going to be in The Mandalorian. I thought she was going to be in Ahsoka. I thought she might be in Obi-Wan. I wanted to know what was going on with her for quite a while, so I was very excited to see this. And that leads us to the first episode where we essentially see Coruscant, where Barriss is in her prison cell, and she kind of sees the Jedi Temple on fire, and essentially witnessing Order 66 from afar. and she sees the shock troopers kind of come in, and basically she kind of is essentially offered the opportunity to basically say she's glad she's not a Jedi, and you can have the opportunity to be a part of something bigger. She's visited here, and that opportunity is presented by Lynn Rakish, the fourth sister. So we knew her from Obi-Wan. I was very excited to see more about her. But so we see her come in and essentially say to Barriss, like, you won't have to deal with any of this. You can become part of something bigger. And the fourth sister says, this is a really special opportunity. So Barriss says, all right, sure, let's do it. So we see Barriss and the fourth sister go to what I was really surprised to see being built already at this point, the Fortress Inquisitorius. That is something we've seen in Fallen Order. You hadn't gotten to that point yet.
Yeah.
But you also are familiar with it from Obi-Wan.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Such a cool concept of having this semi-underwater fortress. So seeing it built, it's kind of a clever way they got around it. In Obi-Wan and in Fallen Order, it looks slightly differently for some reason. I'm not sure why. But I think they gently danced around that very cleverly by having it being built up to the point where it looks the same. It's kind of clever. So we're pulling in there anyway. Sorry, I got a little excited there.
Yeah, it's a good thing to be excited about.
I know. And we see her get to the Fortress Inquisitorius. We see some of like some clone troopers, some of the gray troopers, and Barriss ends up seeing in this room two people she knows, Dante and Amar. These are presumably Jedi that had survived the Purge for some reason, right?
Yeah, do we think they were like her and in trouble at the time?
There has to be some reason, some shred of doubt in their minds that would have made them say, like, we're taking these people.
Yeah.
Like, clearly they tried to kill Ahsoka. She wasn't even a Jedi at that point.
Right.
In the literal sense.
Yes.
But anyway, so we have these two people she knows, and we end up seeing the Grand Inquisitor, who once again is played by Jason Isaacs, which is very exciting, come in and essentially say, like, again, the Emperor needs you to restore order and all of the nonsense that the Empire says to want to rule out the Jedi. And the Grand Inquisitor essentially says, go back to your room, or like your quarters, and don't leave until I tell you to. They have some discussion, and Barriss, surprisingly to me, had the most kind of Jedi-like mentality here, where she was like, let's not go. Let's just stay put, even though they had the ability to just walk right out the door. Amar decides to do that. And then the next day, you see the Grand Inquisitor drop a little, like, was it part of their outfit or body? More or less, the Grand Inquisitor discovered that he left and killed him.
Yeah.
The Grand Inquisitor then takes Barriss and sends Dante off with the fourth sister to do their little, like, individual trial. And something I thought was interesting was not that we haven't seen much of the Fortress Inquisitorius that looked as, like, old and stony and archaic. It's almost like they built it around something. Maybe there was a submerged Sith or dark side temple. Like, it is very close to Mustafar. And at this point, I don't think Vader's castle had been built yet.
No.
So it kind of is an interesting little, like, thing that had this kind of, like, ancient-y looking area where the Grand Inquisitor gives Barriss a lightsaber and kind of says, show me your skills.
Yeah.
They fight for a little. He tells her to stop fighting like a Jedi. And then they essentially, she pushes him, shows her his strength, and he seems pretty darn pleased.
Yeah.
So they then get up to this kind of area where Barriss and Dante are essentially forced to, presumably Dante passed his test, and they both are in a situation where they have to fight to the death. Grand Inquisitor throws one lightsaber down, which I thought was such an sinister thing to do.
Yeah.
And then they have a Fortnite-style ring closing in on them around this pit. Dante grabs the lightsaber first, starts swinging at her and everything. Barriss evades him. And much like she did in the Clone Wars, rather than trying to get a lightsaber and desperately fighting for her life, she breaks his neck with the Force. Again, not a kid's show.
She's been on the wrong end of that before, too.
That is true.
We've seen.
With someone she's going to see in just a minute.
Yeah.
So we ultimately see her win. She gets inducted into the Inquisitorius, and we see a set of Inquisitors lining up. We see some familiar faces. We see the Bird Inquisitor from Tales of the Jedi that Ahsoka killed. We see Marek from Ahsoka, who shows up, no extra context, no answers, but exciting to see him.
Mm-hmm.
We see the Fourth Sister, and we see Barriss, who I don't believe has an Inquisitor name at this point.
No.
I think she's just Barriss. But as they're lined up, we see, the classic, shadow, and we see Darth Vader walking in to sit in his throne, and it ends with them all, including Barriss, saying, "Long live the Empire." I really like this episode a lot.
Oh, you can never go wrong with Inquisitor content.
I agree wholeheartily.
And
once again, it's a Rebels fanboy.
And now we get to see the process behind it.
I know. And like this episode answered the questions.
Yeah.
The rest of them make a lot more questions.
Yeah.
But this episode answered the question we all wanted for so long, I feel like.
What happened to Barriss?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so good.
I thought it was so appropriate, the trial she had to go through to become. It just makes so much sense for what we know about the Inquisitors, know about the Empire, know about the dark side.
And even in her trial, remember, she said we don't have to do this. She did what she did out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
You can argue it was her fight or flight.
And you can see all throughout, she's really, I think she's uneasy about this the entire time. Yes. It takes her a while to do what they want at each point, even to the end where she's the last person to put her helmet on and say, "Long live the Empire." Mm-hmm. I do want to talk about the Vader-Barriss connection. I feel like she knows. I feel like she's able to sense it. You can kind of see it in her face.
Yeah.
Are you surprised we didn't get a Vader reaction?
No.
You don't think he doesn't care at this point?
What's she going to do? He beat her once.
I mean, I guess it would be a matter of him just getting up, killing her inexplicably, and then that being it.
Yeah.
But I was kind of glad that it was like more of her like falling in line to him. Do you think he recognized her?
Yeah. I think he handpicked her.
Interesting. Would that have...
She was disillusioned with the Jedi to begin with. He didn't have to convince her.
But do you think... Because we see her recruited as the temple's burning. That seems kind of short notice. How did they do it? This brings up a bunch more Inquisitor questions. They had to have these guys ready to go. Super disillusioned. Palpatine had to have like a short list or something of people who hate the Jedi.
And that's why we see Barriss.
That, because makes a lot of
trial,
sense.
She even says, like, as the clone trooper said, like, the Jedi, or maybe not the clone troopers, it was discussed that at her trial, she admitted that the Jedi have lost their way and that... Which
she was not necessarily wrong about.
And they're murderers.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it would make sense to me that she'd be the first one on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Palpatine's probably like, yes.
Let's go. We like her.
Got number 4. Or number... Actually, probably... Lynn is the 4th sister.
Lynn is the 4th sister.
First sister we see...
So the Grand Inquisitor, I think, is the first.
Yeah.
There are Inquisitors missing here that I wonder about.
Yeah.
So... first is the second sister from Fallen Order.
Yeah.
That's the one where I was like, I feel like she should be here.
Unless Barriss is the second sister.
I don't know. Because they don't tend to like fill them in. I think they just keep going. Like out into the numbers. And then Reva from Obi-Wan, she would have been like a child at this point, so that kind of makes sense.
Is she third sister?
I think so. So I don't know. That aspect of this did kind of confuse me a little bit, but that's one of those things for me where I like
too much about it.
It's fine. We saw Merrick. Still not sure what's going on there. I would love to know more, but
turns into dust.
Turns into the fart cloud,
just like our Birdman.
That one's crazy too. Anyway, that'll take us into that episode was called Devoted. The next episode is called Realization. And this episode for me is where things became unexpected.
Yeah.
So we see Barriss and the Fourth Sister, and I loved the emphasis on the Fourth Sister throughout this set, because they took an Inquisitor we don't know much about and flushed her out. I love when they take characters that exist and are already there. Like when you watch Obi-Wan, you're going to see her so differently than you did the first time. Because at first she was just kind of there. Like she didn't do too much in that show, but now you can see what a awful person she can be.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Ooh. And I do believe that the next episode takes place after Obi-Wan. I have some thoughts on that. But so Anyway, we see Barris and the Force Sister flying through hyperspace in the Inquisitor shuttle, trying to go to this world to find a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
They arrive, and you can instantly tell that, much like in Obi-Wan on Tatooine, everyone's kind of uncomfortable by their presence.
It seems like everybody knows who they are and why they're there.
Definitely.
I mean,
they're not very subtle.
And just kind of talking about it, when we talked about the Bad Batch and Ventress, it's the same thing. You hear about these Inquisitors who will go to planets and kill Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
These Force-sensitive people who are the Jedi hunters, and then all of a sudden they're on your doorstep,
mm-hmm.
and it's only 2 of them.
And the people, I would say clearly, based on the knowledge of a kid even, know that there's a Jedi there.
Yeah.
Or has been a Jedi. Like, there's a Jedi around.
Yeah.
So we end up seeing, is it a bar or just like a little room?
Courtyard. I don't...
We see them, the Inquisitors, enter into this little room where there's a bunch of people, and they're essentially starting to... The Force Sister starts to, a little bit manically, interrogate people as to whether there's a Jedi there or not. The citizens all say, no, of course there's not a Jedi there. And Barris, clearly a very different breed than Lynn, leans down to a kid and says, tell me where this Jedi is and we can help make things better and we'll get out of here, basically. The Force Sister is still kind of going crazy, yelling at everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid eventually tells Barris where to find the Jedi. He says they're in the mountains.
Yeah.
And Barris is like, all right, okay, Force Sister, here we go. We know where the Jedi is. And then I expected them to just walk out.
Yeah, me too.
We then get into what is another brutal scene of the Force Sister essentially massacring every single person in the room except for the child.
Yes.
Do you think that was the whole village in that area? Or do you think they were like...
a lot of them.
I would agree.
This scene... what does the Fourth Sister say? I know the answer.
Go ahead, say.
People are judged on their actions,
Mm-hmm.
implying why she left the kid alive, because the kid is the one who gave them the information.
And it didn't look like she was initially going to. Yeah. Because the kid was like holding on to Barris.
Mm-hmm. And Barris even kind of tucked him behind her.
You could see Barris was mortified.
Yeah. This scene reminded me of another Jason Isaacs movie called The Patriot with Mel Gibson.
Enlighten me.
So that movie follows Mel Gibson, a farmer who basically fights in the South for the Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And Jason Isaacs is the main villain, this brutal cavalry officer who's tasked with catching Mel Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scene where they're able to track sympathizers down this village. And Jason Isaacs' character rounds them all up in a church. And the same thing happens. We know where you are. We know that you know. Somebody tell us, and you'll be forgiven. And it's the same thing. This is happening, and then finally, some guy speaks up. Oh yeah, they were here. They're down by the river. And Jason Isaacs says like, "Thank you," and leaves. And the guy's like, "I thought you said we'd be forgiven." He's like, "I'm not the one to forgive you. That's between you and God." And then they lock the church up and burn it to the ground.
I bet you never thought you'd be comparing Star Wars to that.
No, and as I was watching, I'm like, this is identical. This is the near identical scene as to what happened.
That's pretty... I love when Star Wars pulls in influences that are entirely unexpected.
And it was with and the only reason I thought it was like his Grand Inquisitor. I'm blanking on his name in the Patriots, Captain somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if
crazy.
you're ever to watch that movie, when you get to that scene, it'll remind you of this scene in Tales of the Empire.
That's nuts.
Yeah. And I don't think it was an accident. I think they did that on purpose.
I'm sure. But that tragedy takes us to Barris and the Force Sister climbing up the mountain, and they eventually find this Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
No one particularly significant. Jedi we've never seen before.
Yeah.
And they essentially get into a lightsaber fight. And
after the Jedi throws rocks at them.
Yes.
She must have been pretty with the Force to realize they were coming.
Yeah, I think that...
Because it's not like she could have been warned.
They had to have sensed, the
death.
Yeah, all of that. And they end up getting into this fight, and the Fourth Sister gets kind of knocked down, and it's Barriss versus the Jedi. And they fight and fight and fight, and you kind of see Barriss come to this breakthrough where they're like... where Barriss kind of is... This is the scene. She's like, They shouldn't kill this Jedi. They should capture him and give him the chance that she had, more or less, right? Mm-hmm. And then the Fourth Sister attacks a Jedi, and that's that.
Yeah.
Not that. That's not that. But the Fourth Sister attacks a Jedi. It's not. I'm telling you why. I'll tell you why I don't think it is. Barriss essentially then starts to, Barriss is not happy about this, and eventually is able to. What does she do? She lights her lightsaber and pushes the Fourth Sister off a mountain.
Yeah. Kind of ragdolls her.
Yeah, I know. I don't think the Fourth Sister was ready for this.
No, hence why she was able to get thrown.
I think she knew Barriss was conflicted at this point, but I don't think she was expecting her to fall and push her out. And I love the connection to the Force push being not necessarily a Sith dark side Inquisitor thing that she used to impress the Grand Inquisitor, but is also what she used to actively defy the Inquisitors.
Yeah,
I thought that was a fun little connection. And then Barriss runs back to the Jedi and said that she would try to save them,
mm-hmm.
which I thought was okay, sure, whatever, and we don't know what happens. That, I think, directly connects to the next episode. So
you just want to go right there?
Do you have anything else to add about this episode?
Yeah, I want to say, I was kind of thinking that Barriss and the Fourth Sister, Lynn, were doing the same job. They
Mm-hmm.
interpreted it differently.
100%.
Barriss, whether through delusion or not, truly believed that she was helping, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Still doing her job, just doing it differently.
Mm-hmm.
She was able to find out where the Jedi was able to get the Jedi to surrender.
Yeah.
You could argue she's a very successful Inquisitor.
Uh-huh.
So.
Highlighting why the dark side is bad. I think it's... Dark side often gets oh my god, it's so cool. I think this is a great display of, while it may be more theoretically powerful, or not even theoretically, may be more powerful, it's never the right way to go.
Mm-hmm.
I really did love this episode. I thought it was I was not expecting, a Barriss light side turn, especially after where we left her in the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a really big surprise to me, and they kind of foreshadowed it with the talking to the kid and just seeming a little uneasy over the last episode. Mm-hmm. But I was not expecting it, and I'm a sucker for a light side redemption story.
Yeah, I can think of one.
Ben Solo or Crosshair?
Ben Solo.
Ben Solo's Force. Crosshair is a non-Force example of that.
Yeah.
Love Crosshair. Anything else on that episode?
No.
That takes us to the next episode, and we're going to leave the her wanting to help that Jedi. We're going to leave that dangling because I think it directly connects to the next episode. So again, the one with the Fourth Sister going crazy was an episode called Realization. This episode, the final one for the Tales of the Empire, is called The Way Out.
Way Out.
Oh dear.
I had to. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. And/or reference. This episode, we see these parents taking their child through this blizzard to see the healer.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, something's wrong with them. They don't quite know why, but we see these people who are clearly helping the healer end up directing the family and the child to the healer, who we see is a short-haired, substantially older-looking Barriss.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh God, how far ahead are we? And then there are a few things that kind of tip off what I think is happening here. And we'll get there. But essentially, the first thing that tipped me off is they said, basically Barriss senses that nothing's wrong with the kid.
Yeah.
And that the Inquisitors, the parents indicate that the Empire will come for him.
Mm-hmm.
Basically indicating that this is a Force-sensitive child.
Yes.
Which, after all our recent discussion, the Bad Batch got me all jazzed.
Yes.
So I was very excited about that. And we kind of see Barriss say, we'll take care of you. I'll make sure that you guys are safe.
Mm-hmm.
And as Barriss is doing this, we see, something's coming, something's happening. And what do we see? But Barriss essentially sends them off as this is happening to go to find the ship. And Barriss is to take them to an old friend. Ahsoka?
My head went somewhere else.
I think it would make more sense for it to be the Path. Something with the Path.
My head went to Ventress.
That would make sense, wouldn't it?
She and Ventress had an encounter before.
Yeah, they did, didn't they?
I don't know if we'd call it friendly.
No.
They had an encounter.
But it definitely, like, I think it would make a lot of sense for it to be Ventress. While I would love for it to be Ahsoka, and Ahsoka very well could be involved with the Path, it's not a far leap to make.
Yeah.
And could be potentially what she was doing during the Civil War. But I think, that Ventress would be a great answer to that. And so essentially what I assume is Barriss is sending her helpers and the family off to go be helped by the Path. As this is happening, we see the Fourth Sister. And this is where we get into another thing about the time. The Fourth Sister looks identical.
Yeah.
To where we last saw her. And she's still wearing her Empire stuff. This is clearly in the time between the prequels and that, like, essentially the time of the Empire, before the Rebellion. My thoughts, and this is kind of, I did see other chatter of this, is Barriss looks so old because she's been, much like Rey and Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens, and The Rise of Skywalker, my obligatory Rise of Skywalker mention this week, is she's healing, using the Force to give little pieces of herself, which is how Rey described it, is like giving pieces of herself away in order to heal others.
Yes.
And I suspect that's what happened with the Jedi. I think she actually did end up saving the Jedi, would be my guess.
Yes. When I first saw that scene, I thought the woman carrying the child was the Jedi.
Ah. Interesting thought. I really was not... it took me well after this episode finished to even be like, why does she look so old? Do you think that's it?
That makes a lot of sense.
I don't really have any other theories.
How would she know that? Oh.
How would she know what?
How would she know how to do it?
I don't know.
Because we know it's a very advanced technique.
And ancient, and there's not much knowledge about it.
We know Luminara's...
Luminara definitely wasn't teaching her that.
Luminara's pretty ancient, though.
Luminara pretty much said, let her and Ahsoka die. We didn't even care.
Yeah, well, Luminara got what was coming.
Another grim cartoon moment, using her dead body to lure Jedi in. But yeah, no, I don't know how she would know that. But maybe it was like one of those things where it's like visceral, like she just kind of like figured it out.
Yeah, she had some time to read.
As this Jedi is dying near her. Or in the prison was your joke.
Or, yeah, we just don't know.
Well, yeah, I think that's another example of how may not be as important as it's what happened. Mm-hmm. And maybe she like got better at it, tried to look into it, all that kind of stuff. I love this role. I was fully expecting Barriss to just stay bad.
Yeah.
Seeing her now not just put it into practice once with rescuing that Jedi, but to actually devote the rest of her life to helping not only to heal, but to also connect Force-sensitive people with the Path. I thought that was just a great role for her and kind of like atoning for what she'd done.
Yeah, and you could even argue that Barriss herself was a very pure form, a very pure ideological Jedi. That was her biggest gripe with the Jedi, was that they lost their way.
It's almost like her and Ahsoka are different sides of the same coin. Like Ahsoka is like, she does the actions of a true Jedi.
Yeah.
And it seems like Barriss does too. But they just approach the problems of it in a different way. Mm-hmm. And I guess we kind of did our little discussion of that point early. But that then takes us into like the action of the episode. Barriss essentially says, like, I'll let you go after them, but I needed to give them a head start. I believe that she allows this to happen because it's like a kind of like a dig of a cave sort of thing. Like, without a clear head, Lynn will never be able to get her out there. Mm-hmm. So we essentially see this cool little chase scene where the family and Barriss's helpers are able to kind of navigate around these like caverns. Even though they're close to the Inquisitor, she's never able to catch them. Mm-hmm. They get in their ship and leave. And Barriss essentially has this, what I thought was a forced conversation at first, but maybe it was just a real conversation. But like, she was essentially trying to talk the Fourth Sister out of the dark side. Like, basically saying like, her master is like, they have this whole discussion of like, what is her master? And like, it's actually like she's kind of a slave to the dark side and stuff, and she's not doing what she actually wants to.
Barris said something along the lines of fear.
Uh-huh.
And she said, like, fear is limiting you, and...
Fear is your master, something to that effect.
Or, yes, fear is your master, and then the fourth sister says, no, fear is my ally.
Uh-huh.
It gave me the Batman vibes.
Yeah.
Darkness.
I think Barris may have been more correct, but we do see the fourth sister kind of going a little crazy, swinging her lightsaber around, and what shocked me was that Barris appears, and the fourth sister actually like stabs her with her lightsaber.
I think deep down you knew that was coming.
I knew it was a possibility.
The whole conversation was about Barris telling her to clear her mind. She has to clear her mind to get out.
That's true.
And how else will she do it?
I guess talking clearly wasn't working.
No.
And I think this leads us to, again, why I think it might be after Obi-Wan, because I feel like the fourth sister doesn't go through this experience and just go back to the Fortress Inquisitorius. It's like, hey guys, how you doing?
Yeah, she said, I can't fail. I know what happens when you fail.
I have a suspicion. I guess we can say this episode and series ends with the fourth sister getting out, carrying Barris out.
Yes.
I think there's a reason it's not clear-cut Barris has died.
Again.
I don't believe I see her, her breath was still going.
You
can see it.
We've watched multiple people get stabbed with a lightsaber.
Especially these days.
Yeah. Poor Qui-Gon.
I know.
Qui-Gon's Force Ghost is probably very disappointed watching
Again.
It's like, darn Obi-Wan.
Couldn't have just figured this out. But it,
Too busy hanging out with Satine.
That's pretty good. Extra time in his studies might have helped. But I really feel like there's going to be some sort of turn where we could see Barris and the Fourth Sister working together in the future. Maybe the Fourth Sister heals Barris, or they find some way. But I don't think this is the end of either of these characters.
Yeah. Dave loves Barris too much.
I'd say. Even though she was actually, her appearance was first live action in the Clone War, or in the Attack of the Clones. Did you know that?
I think so.
It's crazy that character isn't turned into such a integral, prolific, useful animation character.
I mean, it really is. She was the catalyst for Ahsoka, for everything.
Who knows what would happen with Ahsoka if she wasn't like...
What happens if Luminara just let Ahsoka die in Paris?
Anakin might have turned to the dark side earlier.
Anakin would kill Luminara on the
spot. That's possible. I really love this episode. I really loved the... Do you have anything else to add specifically about this episode?
No.
I think starting with Barris, and then we'll tie their lessons together. I think Barris was a great character to choose because it did showing how you can be kind of conned into joining the Empire based on opinions that may be valid, but even though the Jedi may not have been perfect, it shows that the Empire is so much worse.
Yeah.
And that is essentially the story of the Empire through and through. And this is kind of your standard, I feel like almost, oh my God, the Empire really is terrible story.
Yeah, grass isn't always greener, Barris.
And unfortunately, she learned that the hard way, didn't she?
Yeah.
I think it would be unnecessary to talk more about Barris's lessons without just tying Morgan's in.
Yeah.
I think these characters were chosen as parallels. And I think they show, they both are almost out of fear, more or less, or, spite or revenge. Something.
They had a reason.
They had a decent reason for leaving where they were to go join the Empire.
Correct.
And I think that having them both join the Empire, and where Barris, in her episode titled Realization, has this realization of, oh my God, this is not what I should be doing. You see Morgan fall deeper into it. Make a deal with Thrawn, who is, she's falling deeper into the Empire, which clearly is not going to end well for her.
Yeah.
But,
that's reflected in the episode titles.
Suffering. That one's after. But yeah, fear, anger, hate. You can see her kind of progress through this. And I think it was such a interesting way to tie these two characters together. I would not have, if you asked me what would Tales of the Empire have been, I don't know that I would have arrived at these two characters.
Me neither. I thought you would have gone with Tarkin or
something like that. I'm so glad we got what we did. I found myself liking the Barriss side more because I'm more Jedi Force
Really?
focused.
Are you?
I don't know.
I didn't pick up on that.
Andor's actually my favorite. But I really love the Morgan episodes as well.
Yeah.
Overall, what did you think of Tales of the Empire?
I thought it was great. It was much like Tales of the Jedi. It added so much depth to these characters who I wouldn't say these are as fan favorites as the other ones.
No, definitely not.
But it added so much depth to them. It makes their story so much more impactful. And like you said, on the rewatch, you'll look at these characters so differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you were to go back and watch Mandalorian, you'd see, when you see Morgan, you'd be like,
Oh, wow. I know exactly what's going on here.
yeah.
Go ahead.
In Mandalorian, did Ahsoka say where is Grand Admiral Thrawn or where is Admiral Thrawn?
Where's Grand Admiral Thrawn? I think Grand.
Okay. Oh, duh. Never mind. There was a time jump. I forgot about the time jump.
Yeah, we were playing fast and loose with time through these episodes. You had to be really...
I mean, they were also playing fast and loose with time in these episodes.
That is true.
It totaled to what? An hour and a half?
Uh-huh. It felt like... And I, as we're recording, we're now verging on a little over an hour. Mm-hmm. I realized how much stuff was in here. It felt so fast to watch, but it really was... They packed... It was so condensed. Like, it's very concentrated. All of the lessons. It's got just as much of lessons and Star Wars story stuff as usual, just condensed in a tiny little package.
I agree.
I have two other things I want to say. First, where and if will we see these characters again? Do we see Morgan come back, be resurrected on Peridia?
There's a chance.
I think there's a chance. I would love it, but there's...
Do you think they join up with Morgan to get off the planet?
Probably not. I would see her being like more of a villainous force. And I don't know that it would be Morgan as we know her. I think it might be like a zombie kind of Morgan, kind of like what we saw with the Night Troopers. But I would love to see her again. I was sad when she bit the dust in Ahsoka.
Yeah.
But nevertheless.
Had what's coming.
Definitely. Clearly, as we see here.
Yeah.
Do we think we'll see Barriss again?
Yes.
Why would Dave leave us off like this? That's the question.
He could have killed her 3 separate times.
In 3 different shows.
Yep.
I really would love the Barriss Ahsoka reunion, selfishly. That's why
Again, it just leaves us wondering, who's the friend?
Exactly.
I think that's what we're going to see next. Who is the friend?
And we kind of pitched on our like future of Star Wars animation part was it last week? Week before?
At some point.
We did that. I think this could nestle very well into one of those stories, depending on the timeline and everything.
I agree.
So, yeah, I think I would love to see more from both of these characters, whether it's before or after. I think they are just very rich characters that, surprisingly almost to me, filled in a lot of Star Wars storytelling.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Me too.
Did you like it more? And I don't love comparing. Comparison is often fruitless, but what did you think of this compared to Tales of the Jedi? You don't have to say, like, which did you like better, but, like...
It's hard to compare the two, because kind of like what I was alluding to earlier, the people we followed in Tales of the Jedi...
one is your favorite character.
Well, no, just they're such big characters in the prequels, in the Clone Wars. I mean, Count Dooku was always the big bad. Mm-hmm. Always. Yeah. I mean, the second biggest bad, but, the face. The face of the Sith. And Ahsoka is the daughter of light.
Oh, wow. So dramatic.
So profound. I'm only quoting you.
We'll get into that another time. But yeah, no, I think it was very different, and the scale of what they were trying to do was different.
And it's hard to compare.
I agree.
Apples to oranges.
I think they were equally successful at their goals, both shows.
I agree. And I think they can use these tales to fill in the gaps.
100%.
Of anything.
Anything.
Literally anything.
Do you think that'll segue into our second segment quite well?
I think so.
So, love Tales of the Empire. Can't wait to see what they do next with this. I will say I'm a little bit bigger of a fan of this format rather than like Star Wars Visions. I love seeing the creativity of Visions, but I love the canon answers more.
I don't even care about the canon. I just like seeing creativity.
It's true. And Visions has got creativity and heaping spoonfuls.
Creative freedom to do whatever.
True. And are not constrained by the canon.
Yeah.
anyway, Dan brought up the idea of Tales of the ... What might we want to see? We've kind of thrown some ideas out previously, but we wanted to pitch 3 separate Tales of series, and we each know what the 3 are.
Yes.
But we each came up separately with the 2 characters that will follow in kind of a general story.
And I can't imagine we'd share.
Yeah, no, I would be surprised if we had overlap. Maybe a character,
might.
but some of them are a little more pigeonholed. But
So, yeah, let's first introduce what our 3 Tales of are, and then let's jump right into it.
absolutely, these 3 are Tales of the Rebellion, Tales of the First Order, and Tales of the Underworld.
Ooh.
Do you want to start with Tales of the Rebellion? Why don't we start with Tales of the Underworld? Because it is probably my spiciest. I don't want to leave people with the spicy one.
Oh, spice. It's a great pun. I don't think it was intentional.
Oh, no, it wasn't at all. That's
You should have taken credit. You've been like, yeah.
I totally intended that. Do you want to go first?
By all means, you can take off. I don't want to leave the spice lingering.
All right, so I'll start with Tales of the Underworld. The 2 characters that I'd like to follow here are 2 characters that are not beloved.
Oh, no.
One of them is hated because their actions. The other is hated because they're just kind of an unlikable character. This would focus on Sid from The Bad Batch
Oh, that's a good one.
and DJ from The Last Jedi. You see why I don't want to finish with that one?
That would be...
Dan said, Disney Plus is actively losing subscribers at the thought of this show. May I elaborate a little further?
By all means.
So, would I even want to watch this? If this trailer came out...
Yes, you'd absolutely
If this
watch it.
trailer
You
came
would-
out, we're sitting there at work, this trailer comes out, you'd be like, oh. And I'd probably say, oh, get that out of here. I'm not even watching that.
There'd probably be a little Babu frick in there.
That would make me happy.
And
But
you'd be like,
Babu, Dan, he's
Watch it.
back.
what's this? I don't know. Babu.
But my thought here is these characters are both morally gray characters. I don't think either are legitimately bad or evil.
Mm-hmm.
And they are operating at very similar times,
Mm-hmm.
but obviously decades apart.
Yes.
Sid serving this role in the Empire period, where DJ would be more in the, obviously First Order period. I think DJ is a little more blatantly like, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me who I help. But where Sid is kind of very self-serving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these stories could kind of work well. I don't necessarily have 3 fleshed out plans for them,
Yeah.
but I think you could see both of them get to the position we see them in their respective movie or show.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, I'd like to see a turning point for each of them. Like DJ, clearly is at first willing to help the Resistance.
Yeah.
Sid is clearly willing to, I think because of the personal side, honestly, is willing to help the Bad Batch. But we see them ultimately fail at those. I'd love to see them overcome that and then do something good
Yeah.
in their respective times. Again, the specifics here or there.
Mm-hmm.
I hate Sid. I really hate Sid.
I know.
And I think she doesn't deserve closure with the Bad Batch, but I would love to see her do something to at least point herself in the right direction.
I agree.
DJ, I think, is less of a despicable character. Still pretty awful, but awful in terms of like his actions.
Yeah.
But I think it would be interesting to kind of take these morally gray characters and build on them a little in a way where they didn't have the chance to in their original media.
I like that.
What do you think about that show?
Well, your show may have lost subscribers, so I'll try and get them back.
Okay, what do you got for Tales of the Underworld?
First one, this could be basic. You're going to scoff at me. Cad Bane.
No, I would see how you went. Oh, when I said mine, I said, oh, and you said Cad Bane.
The people love Cad Bane.
The kid snatcher.
He has done so much. We've seen so much of him.
Captures
We know,
so many children.
yes. A young Cad Bane. How did he start?
That's a great question.
How did he get pulled into the underworld?
I don't know.
And then I might lose subscribers on this one too. I'm saying the prequel era for both
That's
of them.
okay.
The Martez sisters.
That'd be kind of fun. And I think it
Different underworld, different reasons, both doing things. The Martez sisters are doing what they need to do to survive.
Mhm.
Cad Bane's doing it for the money. They're both doing it for the money. They're both, stealing spice, kids. Scales are a little tipped. But I think it would be really interesting to see, especially because they were working in the same theater at the same time.
Yes, and I enjoyed seeing the Martezes. I was like, with season 7 of the Clone Wars, I was kind of like, all right, let's go. Let's go.
We know
but
it's coming.
When we saw them in the Bad Batch, I really enjoyed that actually. Mm-hmm. So I think that it would be good to focus on them, and we kind of know their origin.
Yeah, we know.
So it would be interesting to kind of take them post maybe what we see and kind of go from
like
there.
The first episode could be just the replay of what happened.
Mm-hmm. Like actually putting it
into perspective. Yeah. So I think the people would go crazy for Cad Bane and watch. We'd have to somehow not say which episode's which.
I know. It's like you'd have to. It's almost, I feel like for this one, it's like the bulk of people were like Barriss, yeah, okay, Morgan too. I feel like it would kind of be like that.
Yeah, I'd have to have them both in the same episode. That way they can't skip around.
I know. And it obviously would be good. But I think your show might be a little more realistic / fan friendly than my actually getting in the dirt and repairing some characters who might be terrible people.
Yeah.
I think those are kind of fun choices though.
I think so too.
I bet you weren't expecting DJ.
No.
I bet you never thought we would talk about DJ on this podcast.
Again, in our sequel rewatch, which is going to happen.
I don't like the character.
I'm not surprised.
I like the good guys,
Really? Again, every day Joey says a Star Wars opinion, and I'm just so blown out of the water by.
Love the Jedi, love the good guys on that.
As I'm looking at his Lego wall of the N1, the Ghost, the Marauder, and Ahsoka's T-61.
Yeah, I don't...
Joey hates the good guys. And a Kanan action figure.
Yeah, and a Mandalorian helmet.
And a Bo-Katan helmet.
I like the good guys. I don't really have any bad guy ships. I'm struggling. This is 100% a podcast aside. I apologize. They released this Star Destroyer Lego that's gonna... I don't want it. But it's got a Cal Kestis minifigure in it.
Get it.
I don't want it. I want the figure.
I want the
So am I going to spend like $30 on a minifigure on eBay? Or am I just going to get the set?
You're going to get the set.
I'll get the set. You take the set. I'll take Cal.
No,
Shave $25 off of it for you.
If I'm getting the set, I'm getting Cal too.
Maybe you'll play the game eventually. Oh, anyway, that brings us
that
to...
That was supposed to hurt.
It should hurt. You're missing... Honestly, it's your loss.
Call me Barriss.
Wow.
Or Tech, better yet.
Oh, he's really still going on Tech. We're only 1 week out, I guess. Anyway, that brings us to our second to the last, our penultimate Tales of idea. I'm going to do Tales of the First Order now. Avid sequel fan here.
I know.
I'm quite excited about the concept here. And I'm going to give you, Dan, the floor first.
Tales of the First Order. When we were discussing this, one of the topics that did not get brought up was Tales of the New Republic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're so intertwined. And we are getting this in Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to follow a New Republic person in Tales of the First Order.
I like that.
And see, how are we getting the First Order? We know it's coming. We know it's there. We know that things are in place at the moment.
And like Leia knew about the First Order, and that's why she splintered off to start the Resistance, because the New Republic didn't think it was a real thing of concern.
So I want to see a New Republic First Order, New Republic person, whether it is somebody who understands the First Order is coming, or better yet, somebody who doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Give me one of those senators who scoffed at Hera for saying
stupid Ziono.
I'll follow him.
Ugh, that's worse than Sid.
And then on the flip side of that, give me a First Order lackey, whip, whatever you want to call them, one of the underlings who's moving and grooving, trying to get this thing off the ground.
I like the concept of these unnamed characters.
I just want somebody new. I know you love using old characters, existing characters to tell stories, but when we're treading on new ground, sometimes it's good to just have new characters out there. And,
you would never have got Ahsoka without a new character.
And I think we don't need to have these high-profile characters. Just give me a random HR person from the New Republic.
The Cyril Karn of the New Republic, if you will.
Yeah. Who's just living their life, and all these things start to happen.
Maybe their mother wouldn't be as awful as Edie Karn.
I saw this is just an aside, I saw like a Mother's Day, Star Wars Mother's Day card. It's like, thank you for being great mothers, and her in the middle was not you.
Literally the worst mother in Star Wars.
Anyway, I think that's where I would go with Tales of the First Order.
I like that.
See the rise.
Because I think it's something they intentionally did not do much of in the sequels, is the politics, because people at the time complained about the prequel politics stuff. So I think seeing that, and again, having a show to build up to that, which the Mandalorian, that era kind of is.
Armitage Hux. Put him as one of the people.
That brings me to my idea for Tales of the First Order. General Hux. My dad is a big Star Wars fan. He's the reason I'm a Star Wars fan. But he's not been as into the sequels as I am. And anytime he sees a First Order bad guy, he just calls him General Hux. I think they do a good job, especially in The Rise of Skywalker, differentiating why Hux might not just be your average First Order lackey. Mm-hmm. He's incredibly petty. He's really funny.
Yeah.
Ironically, like I don't think he knows he's funny, but he's really funny. And I think this Hux would be a good way to focus on the bureaucratic part of the First Order. I think he could start with his connection to his dad, and he assassinates his dad with Phasma. So that could be a cool like connection to a previous story where he's actually, we're seeing much like the Ahsoka one where she fought the Inquisitor. That's the Ahsoka book.
Yeah.
But, small part of it in animation. That would be a cool way to do that. Then maybe we see, him start to interact with Kylo Ren. Like, why do they really kind of butt heads? And then the last one could be, what on earth are the series of events that led to him being the rebel spy?
Yeah.
Such a fun turn. I was not ready for it.
Me neither. I think, not to jump the gun, I think the Kylo Armitage beef could be from when Kylo was the radar tech. Armitage
undercover boss.
Armitage probably wasn't the coolest to him.
Mm-hmm.
You can't kill him like he did the pilot.
No, I mean, well, eventually, a few years down the line. But so that's one side of the First Order, the Empire-like side.
Yeah.
But there's another aspect of the First Order that we don't know much about, and I think the other character, along with Hux, should be Supreme Leader Snoke.
Oh yeah.
We know he came from a vat. Mm-hmm. We know he's a Palpatine puppet. But I think it would do The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker a wonderful service to better build out. And again, my thing with these is building out more with whether it's the characters. This would be more of the era. Like, how did Snoke come to be? How did Snoke come? And I know this is kind of in the Rise of Kylo Ren comics a little bit, but it's not really explaining how, like, why Snoke? We know the cloning stuff failed in the Bad Batch. Why did we end up with this weird, giant, disfigured guy in a gold robe and gold slippers?
Yeah. Other than it looks cool.
It does look kind of cool with his red background. What series of events led to Kylo and him? That we know from that comic book they meet up and they train. But what was his training like?
Yeah.
And I'd love to see the last one almost not focus on Snoke, but focus on what's happening on Exegol after Snoke gets killed. Like, what is Palpatine's emergency plan other than broadcasting out that he's essentially going to kill everyone? Like, there had to be something in the year in between Snoke dying and, all right, we're going to send a signal to kill everyone with my actual Star Destroyers.
Probably perfecting the language.
And then they released it in
comma. Send it back.
Then they released it in Fortnite. Have you listened to it?
No.
The broadcast that Palpatine releases is in Fortnite. It's fantastic. It really should have been, like, I feel like The Rise of Skywalker could have opened with, like, some, like, not a named character, but someone, just a general person in the galaxy listening to this broadcast. Yeah. We'll listen to it when we're done recording. It's so good. But, so yeah, Snoke and Hux, kind of cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Like, shows both sides of the First Order, builds out kind of that, bureaucratic side, and builds out the Force side.
And it's centered around this central person in Kylo Ren.
And Kylo Ren would definitely be in all of these.
Yes.
I would argue, despite Rey being my favorite character, I think Kylo Ren was probably the biggest fan favorite of the sequel trilogy.
1,000%.
So I think...
Not even going to debate you on that one. I love to debate you.
You do. It's your favorite thing. It's your favorite pastime.
It's fun.
Anything else to add on the First Order?
No.
This brings us to our last one for the day, the Tales of the Rebellion. Would you like me to go first?
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
I'm hesitant to say this because I know my wonderful colleague's going to scoff at me. I want an Andor-style show.
Oh.
There it is. Give me an Imperial grunt. What we saw in The Mandalorian with, who was Bill Burr's character?
Migs Mayfield.
Migs.
Are you suggesting a Mayfield Tales of the Rebellion?
No. I want somebody from the Imperial side who's who's having to interact with the rebellion, and who's somebody who's just trying to do their job. Could it be Mayfield? Maybe. Somebody who joins the Empire out of necessity, sees what's actually happening, and sees what the rebellion is, and you can do the little shift of these are bad people to I kind of see where they're coming from to let me join the rebellion. And that could be somebody we know, or it could be a new person. I mean, we see it with Finn. He's probably the biggest one. Stormtrooper.
Iden Versio.
Oh, so good. I didn't want to say her.
No. It doesn't have to be her.
I know, but she was my first thought when I thought of this.
Great character. I'd love to see her again. I think we said that not too long ago about something.
So that's person A. In person B, Bail Organa.
Oh, yes. So much.
Bail
Yes.
Organa.
Dan knows I'm a big fan of both Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, and you had to have known I was going to like that.
Yeah, and
what are we doing with him? Tell me.
Oh, well, little aside, Bail Organa is played by Jimmy Smits, who's in West Wing.
Everyone's in West Wing, apparently.
Anyway, we can see Bail Organa. We get a little bit of him with Ahsoka in Tales of the Jedi. I want to pick up where we left off with him. We know how this series is going to end for Bail.
Unfortunately.
We know he turns into Stardust. But let's see, what was Bail doing behind the scenes?
Clearly a lot.
He doesn't get enough credit.
No, not at all.
So I want to see what Bail Organa speak to me.
Because he's always on the outskirts of the story. He's swooping in to do this thing or sending Leia to do that thing. He's waiting for Obi-Wan to rescue Leia. I'd love to see a story focus on him.
Me too.
And I think it could really talk about the strength of the rebellion.
I agree.
Another thing I think could be interesting. This isn't one of mine, and I'm kind of cheating and adding a third one. But wouldn't it be cool to see a rebel defection to the Empire?
Yeah.
Not a spy, someone who fell for the Imperial propaganda, kind of.
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting.
Sweet.
Yeah. But Bail Organa, wonderful choice.
Thank you.
Now I want to see this. I think I like Bail better than my choices.
No, let's hear him.
All right. My first choice is someone who we know a lot about. We get to spend a lot of time with this character. This character was snubbed from appearing in the Ahsoka show. I want to know more about Zeb.
Yeah.
We know
better.
he's... What? Go ahead.
I said, yeah, I like Bail better.
Wow. You'll like my second one.
I know.
But
I like Zeb. I just wanted to say
I know. But I think we know a lot. Zeb's the kind of the goofy uncle of the group, of course. But
I know the second one.
I'd love to see where Zeb... How did Zeb join up with the rebellion? How did Zeb connect with Hera and Kanan?
Yes.
That kind of stuff I think is really fascinating.
Yes.
So that kind of like Zeb's origins with the rebellion. So pre-Rebels. Then I'd love to go post-Rebels. What are Zeb and Kallus up to? What are they doing?
Yeah.
Kallus is not my second choice.
No.
No.
Ooh, I thought that could have played so well.
No, they...
Go ahead.
No. It could have. But I think Kallus would just be kind of lumped in with Zeb.
Yeah.
And then... So how do we get to Zeb is now a rebel pilot, not directly interacting with Hera? What?
Were they falling out?
No, I don't think so.
Or was the death of Kanan the end of Phoenix Squadron? They were
Phoenix Squadron, yeah. In Ahsoka, I feel like they kind of implied that the rebellion is what pushed them apart. The war with the Empire is what kind of separated them, and losing Ezra and Kanan to different means, probably also, that kind of stuff. But so Zeb, I think, origins. What did he do right after Rebels? What is this New Republic time? Maybe, I think it would be a cool Rebel, a cool Tales of the whatever thing to do to explain why he's not in Ahsoka. Because by all accounts, I think the character of Zeb, if he knew Ezra, there's a chance Ezra could be rescued, Zeb would be there.
We still might see him.
We still might. And I feel like it might have been budgetary constraints that kept us from seeing Zeb. But why? Why? I'm sorry, I'm on my high horse. Why would you introduce him in The Mandalorian and then not have him in Ahsoka?
I mean, let's also not forget who was introduced in The Mandalorian, too.
Who's that?
Rebel pilot Dave.
Oh, forget Rebel Pilot Dave. I'm worried about
Jedi Bob.
I'm going to talk about that at the very end. This is not connected, but I do want to talk about that just for a very quick second. We're going on a long one today. We're going about an hour and a half right now. The last one for me, paired with Zeb, is Omega. Omega, yes. I've not had enough.
Was Bad Batch not Tales of Omega?
Bad Batch was not Tales of Omega. It was Tales of the Bad Batch. So we know, based on the the epilogue of Bad Batch, Omega leaves Pabu to join the rebellion. What does she do when she gets there? Presumably meet up with her friend Hera. What is she a part of? And then, not interfering with any like future plans for like maybe a series or something, but like, what is her role in the Galactic Civil War era, and what might she do after it? Is kind of like my thought.
Supply chain.
Nice, dude. But yeah, no, I think it would pair well with Zeb because we know a lot about these characters from their respective shows, but we don't know much about what's next.
Right. And I think of all of these to be made, yours is the most likely. Actually,
which one?
Back, yours is the least likely.
Which one? This rebellion one?
This exact one.
Uh-huh.
Because, kind of like you said, they've left this open for...
It's going to show up again.
Yeah, we're going to see both of these characters again.
Uh-huh. And it kind of seems like Dooku and Ahsoka, they're pretty fixed.
Yeah, that's why I don't think it'll be a Tales.
Uh-huh. It'll be in something else, I feel like. But I think they're fascinating characters, for sure, nonetheless. Anything else to add on that?
No, we can go all day.
We could. Last thing I want to talk about before we...
all day.
All right, Kat. Last thing I want to talk about before we sign off for the day is Rebuild the Galaxy, the Lego movie series, whatever it is, series, I think, on Disney+.
It looks fun.
All I want to say is Darth Jar Jar is real now, and I hope they make a minifigure.
It'll sell out. Whatever set it is, it'll sell out. I think they will. I think they're going to do a Lego Bob Darth. Jedi Bob.
There's rumor of a dark Millennium Falcon. So it's the black Millennium Falcon that's there. And if it has Darth Ray and Darth Jar Jar,
Yeah. Instant buy.
Cha-ching, right away.
Graduation present.
Hopefully, Dan's on this kick where I need to graduate early, and I don't disagree. Anything else to add about that, Dan?
No.
Love Tales of the Empire.
Very good.
Excited for more of that format.
Yes, and I think it's coming.
I agree.
It can be Tales of anything. And we as a Star Wars fans are going to be like, yes, we'll take it.
Whatever. I mean, seriously, like, even your Andor style show, I would still be excited to watch. And still be, despite being very force-driven, would be very excited for it.
Yeah.
World is their oyster.
Galaxy's their oyster.
Hey! All right, with that, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Please feel free to give us a subscription or review on the podcast platform of your choice. Give us a follow on Twitter or X at Blue Shadow Pod, or on Instagram at Blue Shadow Podcast. And feel free to give our Facebook and YouTube pages, Blue Shadow, a look as well. With that, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much. Have a great week.
And we will see you next time.